Chapter 32, in which unwanted interference has occurred. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the hotel suite, giving the room a cheerfulness that the engineer did not feel. While he is listening to tango music on the radio, the cat queen is bathing herself in the tub. With her hands gripping onto the edges, and her naked body concealed in thick bubbles, she saw them protrude claws out of her fingers. She moaned to herself, slowly scraping her claws on the edges. That's because the effect of Princess Kitty's influence continues to linger within the streets of Kodono. She felt it herself. After the bath, she dries herself and steps out of the bathroom in her pink lingerie. The engineer was waiting for her. "Is there any news I must know about?" she asked, sitting down on an armchair and putting her feet on the footrest. "Well, we couldn't afford a newspaper," he snorted. "Humor me." He changed the dial on the radio until Clayton Wilbury's voice was heard. She turned it up louder. "For those who are listening, the mayor has promised that he and the city council will take immediate action against these strange things," he announces. "In the meantime, we advise you to stay alert in case something unusual happens at this time or place. Now, here's Phineas Trout." "It's just as I feared, Clay," his voice blares out from the radio. "It's been 24 hours since the notorious cat parade here at Main Street. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the sign of our times, the symbol of the unknown, the questioning of an enigma, the mad craze that is still being discussed today. Whatever corner of the city we're in, there has been talk of a mysterious girl. Yesterday at 4 p.m., the KBC interviewed Mercury Theater managers Stephen Rochelle and Trevor Milliken, whether if it was deliberately a publicity stunt they've staged or not. And as it goes on, the managers were beginning to show signs of anxiety and absolute denial. Meanwhile, we've been receiving word about some mysterious girl who may or may not happen to be responsible for any phenomenon, but there's no trace of her anywhere. And as time passes, the people who see these phenomena become more and more spooked and desperate for a clear explanation. In other news, the Kodono Police's search for the missing cats continues to get..." The engineer shakes his head almost imperceptibly as he turns off the radio. "You said I could humor you, and I did," she hissed as her claws protrude from her fingers, scratching the armchair, tearing the upholstery. "If you call this humor, it infuriates me. After so many centuries, I've never been this insulted." "Then why bother asking me?" he asked. "You easily get angry every time I humor you as much as you do the same for me. What are you going to do about this ordeal?" So the mayor decides to take action against the great things she has done. Still holding on to precision and order, don't they? "Oh, bloody hell," he groaned. "Don't tell me we're going to see the mayor." "Not yet," she said. "How about not ever? It's best if we and any demon or ghost can't be seen. Growing up is inevitable, a once and for all time. Precision and order is what the city is always known for. Such unexplained phenomena shouldn't be tolerated. And have the Princess Kitty fade into obscurity, including ourselves. After what we and the Tanaki folk have done, I will not let it be in vain, for I shall have your tongue. Then you shall never speak these words to my face again. Such words that are lethal than the deadly gaze of a cockatrice. Oh, something has to be done about this. To say that is the same as saying that I, you, Ryutaro, Tanaki, Catbus, the Princess Kitty, lust to be believed, to be heard, to be seen by everyone. There shall be no end, no limit, measure, bound, in what shall happen. For that time, he shook his head. Forget about it, boss. It's for your own good. Your efforts of helping this girl is in vain. Everything you've done, it's destined to fail. And there's nothing else you and your deluded friends could do something about it! She's silent, though raging. Then, with all her passion and her strength, she raised her fist and strikes him across his neck, literally knocking him down to the floor and hurting him badly. We'll see about that, she snarled. Picking up the receiver, she dials Ryutaro.
Hello? Who's calling?
Hello, darling.
Queen? Why are you calling me? Can't you see we're in the middle of some heated passion? She's more needy than usual.
Whatever you're doing to your mistress, it'll have to wait. Right now, we have a problem in our hands involving the Princess Kitty.
Princess Kitty? What is it? What's wrong? What about her?
I think it's best if we come visit you to talk about it. Which means I'll leave you back to your copulation.
Thank you, Queen. Please don't call me while I'm pleasing my mistress again. Come meet me at the outskirts of the city, in the woods, at Reynard Manor.
Much obliged, darling. Me and my partner will meet you there. She hangs up the phone and throws her against the vanity mirror, shattering it. Leave everything, she said. We're not going back here again. After we paid for a room? He asked. Who said I've paid? When Charlotte hands over the key to the clerk, she and the old man leave, right before the clerk found out that he'd been swindled. When Charlotte hands over the key to the clerk, she and the old man leave, right before the clerk found out that he'd been swindled. He thought Miss Lenoir gave him money for a suite, but when she left, it turned out that the money she gave to him has been turned into a pile of leaves and acorns. When he looks into the register book for her name, the name has been erased. It's as if she has never been there. But won't he be shocked if the gift she gave him crumbles easily by the time he touched it? Furukawa Ryutaro, one of the Cat Queen's close friends in the underground, made a living in the city of Kodono, but he lives just outside the city limits, where the great wolf of the forest lies, always dormant, but unable to die. He resides in Reynard Manor, a lavish mansion that covers 50 square feet of landscape. Reynard Manor was once called Ashford Manor, built in 1893 by an industrial logging magnate for his late wife, 20 years after their arrival in Kodono. The original owner wanted a house that would be the envy of everyone who preferred to enjoy nature and the beauty it had to offer. And for a time, it was one of the grandest homes ever stood. Constructed with the latest in modern conveniences of the time, including hot running water and a swimming pool from all local resources, the house was finally electrified in 1915. Ironically, the owner was electrocuted that year and died, leaving his entire estate to be inherited by one local, Furukawa Ryutaro, along with his servants and his maids. The original name of the mansion was the first to be altered. On the ground floor, there's a parlor, a library, a gallery, a morning room, a dining room, a ballroom, a drawing room, and a kitchen. The first floor is reserved for guests, comprising of 5 bedrooms, including a master bedroom, a dressing room, a shower room, and a private study. The second floor comprised of an unused nursery, a solarium, a gymnasium, and staff quarters. Outside, there was a topiary garden, a rear garden, a gazebo, and a swimming pool. After his time of lovemaking to his mistress, Ryutaro was in his private study, writing his recent entry on his journal. It seemed that our world is changing for each minute that passes. I can already feel what I truly am, slowly seeping out of my human disguise. It's not that my identity has been exposed to society prematurely. No. It seems that more and more creatures from my book were beginning to appear more frequently. Can anyone imagine how near our time to be revealed is now? How long before we're completely corporeal to everyone? In the future, if there's a story being told to children after they're tucked into bed at night, it must include the cause of our existence in the city they live in. The very amusing character, which is the result of our existence, is this cat girl I've heard about. She was the best choice. Someone from another world. From what I've been told, she wanders all over the city, bringing forth wonders to any person she had met. For now, she remains unwelcome in Kodono. Of course, she won't remain that way for long. There was my friend, the Bakineko Cat Queen, who shall make the girl's presence inevitable. This creature deserves exactly what she gets. He stopped writing to take a drink of sake next to him before continuing. From what I've been told too many times, Kodono has been ordinary for 200 years. But to us, it's been ordinary for far too long. It will not stay ordinary forever. What will happen next? What will happen later? There will be many more creatures that await those who don't believe. People will scream at the sight of them, of course. They always do. We all knew who to thank. The unknown has many who are among the living, with many ways of appearing. He got up and headed downstairs, calling out to his servant. I'm going out. Tell my mistress where I'm going and where I'll be. If she decides to make passionate love to me again, it'll just have to wait. On the way through the forest with the cat bus, the Cat Queen suddenly cried to the engineer, Darling, I think I may be a bit mistaken on where we're going to stay. I guess the kitsune wouldn't mind if we should live with him. Glad to hear it, he groaned. It's either civilized life being too good for you, or I think it's the most terrible case of egotism I ever heard of. When the cat bus stops at the side of the dormant great wolf, the Cat Queen said to him, Let the goddess sleep eternally, cat bus. She doesn't like to be disturbed right now. It's best if you move along. What do you think she's going to do if he wakes her up? The engineer asked. Turn him into a chew toy? Cat bus doesn't taste well for her. But maybe your body might be suitable enough. You shut up! That's the most terrible thing I ever heard. It won't be the last, darling. I have a lot of them. Eventually, the cat bus reached the open wrought iron gates of Reynard Manor. One of the windows stretched into a door. Then the Cat Queen and the engineer exits. If the cat bus sleeps, you're waking him up, she said to her partner. Upon going through the gates, they went up the front porch, their shoes pounding against the wooden floor as they went, before she pulls a black rope, ringing a brass bell from inside.
All right,
a voice shouted from behind the doors.
I'm coming. Please stop ringing the bell, whoever you are.
The doors open, and an old kitsune with pale fur, a right eye of glass, and a limp stood in front of her. However, his working eye is staring at her large bosom.
Yes?
He asked.
Can I help to love you today? Especially you, love?
These aren't my eyes, Inari, she said. Inari, the old kitsune, immediately looked up at her face, smiling.
Oh, they aren't? Guess I'm having a hard time to know that.
If you're done trying to be funny, she hissed, protruding her black claw in front of his face. I advise you let me in. This is between your master and I. Time is of the essence. Inari's smile disappeared.
All right. Say no more, love. I'll let the lot of you in. If I didn't know any better, he was done coupling with his mistress, making love and such.
Oh, you don't say.
I mean, they're animals. What else do you think they do in that room? Play Ring Around the Rosie? Anyway, if you want to see her, I think you should let her rest. She needs to recover for a bit.
He then let them in while the cat bus falls asleep outside. Inside the entrance hall, the Cat Queen can see a tall, slender, twin-tailed vixen with black hair in a short bob cut, dressed in a green frock with a short skirt. Both her twin tails were brushed over her shoulders like a shroud, and in one of her elegant, long-fingered hands, she held a long and stylish cigarette holder. The Cat Queen immediately identifies her as Ryutaro's mistress, Yuwaku Suru. Smoking from her cigarette on the sofa, she hears a voice from the cathedral radio.
And now, over to Lynn Randall with the weather.
The voice from the radio blared out.
Going to be any more weird things tonight? Well, Ted,
Said another voice.
I don't know about that, but this is what's really going to happen tomorrow. By tomorrow morning, we'll be expecting thunderstorms all over the city and the surrounding areas. Big ones. That means all citizens should be advised to take extreme precautions in case of damaging winds or power outages.
Can I get something for you?
Inari asked.
Boiled cream, perhaps?
Make it on a glass and lace it with cat mint, purred the Cat Queen. We're here on official business. However, we might go back and stay here later.
All right, if that's what you want, so be it. I'll show you where we'll be staying when you get back.
Just then, an old St. Bernard dog rushes toward the engineer and placed her paws on him.
Do you mind?
He groaned.
Don't mind her, engineer,
Inari said.
She may be old, but she really wants to play. I'll deal with her sometime soon. Kiki, you heard him. Please leave that man alone. I'll play with you in a little while. You have to be patient. Now go outside and wait there.
Yuwaku Suru turned to the Cat Queen and said through her sultry tone, If you wish to see him, you'll find him outside in the rear garden with his botanical menagerie. How nice, darling, purred the Cat Queen. You must have had a real good time. Yuwaku puffs her cigarette and said, Very pleasurable. I do hope you're going to express your great love to him when you leave. The Cat Queen knelt down and stroked the kitsune's thigh, cooing, Oh, would I, poor Peach? Bring forth your tongue and tell, lusty kitsune. Is love really tender as meat? Have you by any possibility seduced other men before him? Have you robbed them or placed them in humiliating positions after they've fallen asleep? And what makes men, most influential of God's creations, become stirred up by you? It could be either your voice that is hinted with enticement like a siren, or a beautiful figure like Venus standing on an open shell. If I am confirmed, it is no wonder you became his mistress, and you always get your way with him. Or so I've heard. Even I, a Bakeneko, is always interested in the same sex. It didn't surprise me that you always have a way of flirting with the same sex, especially mistresses, the engineer said. Yuwaku blew smoke on his face, causing him to cough. She's just being honest about me, she defended. And how I love to seduce anyone, even though the dear kitsune is mine. Inari calls out,
Well, ho, Cat Queen! Hope you don't seduce her too long. Her master wouldn't barely like it at all, or so I heard.
Never worry, fool, Yuwaku said. If she does have the opportunity, maybe she can get her own way with my master. We can make it as what the French call a ménage à trois. That depends, the Cat Queen said. She got up and placed her paw on the engineer, saying, I will speak to him alone, darling. Why not? He asked. Sometimes he despised your guts. Figures. Then she heads outside, leaving him with Inari and Yuwaku.
What about you?
Inari asked him.
Want some of her cream?
I wouldn't drink it if she baked me on her knees, the engineer spat.
That's really too bad. A pity you have to be stuck with her for God knows how long.
That's something I don't like at all. I'm just glad the visit won't last long. I can't even stand looking at more foxes. Yuwaku blows smoke on his face, causing him to cough again. I wish you'd put away that profane thing if you know what's good, you twin-tailed trollop! He shouts as he continues coughing. And I? Got something to read while I wait?
Well, there's the tale of Mr. Todd, or some of the fables by Aesop, or yesterday's paper,
Inari said. The engineer grabbed yesterday's newspaper from the kitsune before scanning through the headlines. He certainly distracted himself, but not in a good way, as his mouth parted slight, and his right eye widened in shock, his pupil taking in the big bold headline. Bizarre Cat Parade takes over Main Street. Classic folklore to blame. The picture on the front page showed hundreds of cats on hind legs parade through Main Street, while the spirit of freedom is above them. The photographer who took it does have the opportunity to take a picture of Katie of Koriko standing on the bow, but because the ship hovers so high, there's hardly a glimpse of her body. Classic folklore to blame, it said, he said to himself. No wonder these creatures have such a hard reputation these days. That article wasn't brief.
Funny. That's what the master is always thinking of too,
Inari said somberly.
What enlightened times we live in.
I guess that's easy for you to say, old fool.
Appreciate your true honesty. I probably get the feeling that more and more unexplained things start to occur, especially if they have something to do with this girl from another world. I mean, I lived during the time of Izanami and Izanagi, but now I just don't know what the fuss is about with this so-called Princess Kitty.
You heard of her too?
My master has told me about this princess from the Cat Queen.
Of course he would. It's me boss's fault your master's in on this. Always obsessed with this girl, especially while having visions of grandeur.
I don't know if there is such a thing from your boss. I believe she's only getting started.
Outside, the rear garden was populated with a menagerie of hollyhocks and hyacinths, roses and daffodils, lilies and tulips, wild orchids and lavenders. In the midst of the garden, there was a fountain, which will occasionally be occupied by birds. On the table in the gazebo, there was a wooden rectangular box. Inside was a dice game, which was untouched over time. Dressed in only his trousers, Furukawa Ryutaro stood in the front of the flowers, like an audience of hundreds. How sunshine smiles as it dawns over the humble clouds, and streaks light across them in the east, he said, as the sunlight advances, continuing to bring on the day and drying the dew, while my mistress recovers. I guess it would be gay, little friends, if you would let me remain here for a while. I respect the earth like it's a mother and a tomb. You all arise from the earth as from a womb. And when you die, you are buried in the earth. Animals in the forest also come from her womb. Like you, they find nourishment from the natural bosom. And all have some special, unique virtue. I shall always do my very best to tend you little plants. Realizing that the Cat Queen might be outside his house, he merely turned and exhaled, his eyes closed. In a world of grief and pain, flowers bloom even then, he whispered to himself, eyes closed, trying to steady his resolve. I shall tend them and never let them die. I will fear the worst. Then he came unexpectedly. Fancy yourself for a game, she said, without looking at the box on the table in the gazebo. What did you say? He asked, turning to her. I think you've heard me while you're talking to your plants, darling. Yet you always find a way to make a living outside the city limits. Fancy yourself for a game. He went inside the gazebo and opened the box. Inside was a board with 12 pegs on each edge, 6 in each row. The king's army, he said. Although it wasn't common in the ancient world, I did have a fondness of it. A game of chance, of who remains standing. I take cream, you take black, as usual. They both sit opposite the board. You roll first, he said. You always roll first. She reluctantly takes the dice and rolls a 7. He rolls a 10. Then she removes a black peg from her side of the board. How unexpected, he said. What is? She asked. I expect you to roll a higher number, but instead, the sooner we finish without conversation, the sooner we won't waste any more time. 6. He rolls a 9, and she removes a black peg from her side of the board. After a few rolls of the dice from one another, the Cat Queen and Ryotaro lost half of their pegs. Twice they roll the same number, and no pegs are taken out. I think that both of us are in trouble, don't you think? He said. We both lose half of our armies, not to mention we tied twice. Depends on only who gets to fall first, she said, then rolls a 9. He rolls an 8, and removes a cream peg from his side of the board. As the game progresses, she lost 2 pegs while he lost 3. There, she evens it out when she rolls a 6 and he rolls a 9. Now, they both had 3 still standing. However, in each turn, she rolls a number less than his own, causing her to remove 2 of her pegs. Then she rolls a 7, but he can see that 1 black peg remained on her side of the board, and is stung. This isn't right, he said. You're supposed to win like you usually do when you play against anyone else in the underground. You're supposed to have luck. I will remedy this by rolling numbers less than your own. I will not allow you to accept defeat. Just as he is about to reach for the dice, the Cat Queen shot out a hand and takes one of the dice with the number 6 facing up and puts it into her mouth. With a crunch, she chewed it like she was chewing the bones and flesh of a helpless mouse, and swallowed it. You already have, she said, then removes the last peg on her side of the board. Ryotaro can see the remaining dice with the number 1 facing up. An entire army lost, she went on, and rose from her seat before shaking his hand. Well played, darling. Already livid, he shoves her hand away. So you really have the intention to lose this time, don't you? Cans of tuna didn't arouse you all of a sudden. City life no longer interests me. Not while I'm Miss Lenoir, an expert in mythology. Today's game of the King's Army has a purpose. It's not only myself who's representing the black pegs, not even the yokai. 1 peg that remains represents that of the one, the Princess Kitty, with the cream representing mankind, the ones who don't believe anymore. Furious, he shoves the open box aside off the table. The pegs and the dice shatter like broken glass once the board hits the ground. I demand an explanation, he snapped, rising from his seat. And you will get it right now, she hissed. We have some interference that will be bad for the one. What kind? The mayor of the city and his council has decided to do something about the great things the Princess Kitty did. I'm really sure you have any idea how serious it would be. It's like they want to make her unheard and unspoken. It's like they wanted to make their city the way it should be. It's like they want to keep her presence quiet. Quiet. And so will us, Ryotaro, she said, her anger visible underneath her grin. And so will your mistress. Clearly, you don't want it. Right there, Ryotaro can see the representation of those 3 cream pegs that remain. The first represent the mayor, the second represent the council, the third represent the population of 300,000. At least half grew up, never to believe in anything unusual, just having thoughts of precision and order. And where could he be? He asked, his anger held in check, unlike hers. We shall go to 402 Main Street to confront Donovan ourselves. After everything we've done, after supporting the princess, I will not let it be in vain. Shame comes to Donovan. And I do hope that you're with me. They had to question the natural order of things, do they? Let me tell you right now, such an act will not be tolerated, as long as we're among the living. It's their incredulity towards us that makes us displeased the most. If you talk of my concern and hers, I am with you. As a friend, I will say this. See to it that the mayor and the city council grasp the severity of what's to come from now on. What do you mean? It might have something to do with Kitty's presence in Kodono. Needless to say, given that her presence isn't known to the city. What? I think it might be best if we confront Donovan about it, Queen, he declared. May God help him and his council if they choose to give us a slight sign of disaffirmation. I hope they don't. When it's all said and done, then I'll let you go and have your way with your mistress in bed, if you might get the chance. Oh, the things I would do for Yuwaku's relentless seduction. How I admire her, for she is the love of my life. Anything she can do, I will be well advised to remember. And what do you think of my seduction? She cooed. Yours would only drive men, weaker men, to kill each other like animals, or have other yokai kill them, Queen. Which means to anyone who dare oppose you, you'll be the last thing they'll ever see. Of course, I do expect you to spare him. He will live to see the consequences for his disbelievability, especially towards the girl. There is an old saying. You have sayings for everything, don't you? Like your riddles. Well, you'll love this. It goes, never do away with someone who is the root of an unforeseeable misfortune. Then he will live to pay the price.